Welcome back to the ZERT Coffee and Chaos podcast, a show where we talk about anything and everything relating to what it means to be a survivalist and a prepared individual in today's society. I'm your host, Chris Bartagone, ZP002. My co-host with me this week, as always, is Jamie Franks. Jamie, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Awesome.
It's another
Always
gloomy day in SoCal, which I actually kind of like this time of year. They call it the May gray or the June gloom in San Diego. Yeah. It gets like warm enough during the day, but it's still like nice and cool at night. So you can sleep with your windows open and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. All right. We've had some gorgeous weather here. I mean, when I woke up and got ready to leave this morning, it was 63 degrees. And right now we're sitting at 73. The sun's out and it's warm. It's just obviously there is no humidity that is in the air, which is great. Spent another weekend camping and had amazing weather, just perfect sunny days with a cool night. I mean, I think it got down to about 48, 49 degrees overnight.
Oh, nice. That's perfect.
Yeah. And then that was night one, and night two was probably in the mid 50s. But I mean, a wool blanket and a 55-pound pit bull will keep you warm no matter what. So Stella is a nuclear heater when it comes to sleeping. So I've always been fortunate because she's always come with, all except for I think once she's come with. But there's a couple of planned camping trips that I have coming up that she may not come out. And just because one of them I want to do a hammock, an overnight hammock camp, and obviously there's not really a place for her to kind of sleep at that point. So
they make a hammock specific sleeping pad.
They do.
And it's a little bit, it's like more expensive than a regular sleeping pad.
Yep.
But the biggest issue with sleeping in a hammock that I've found is like my ass turns into an ice block because you have the wind obviously going above and below you, and you can put a blanket on top, but then there's nothing, on the bottom, even if you're in a sleeping bag in the hammock. So the hammock sleeping pad, I think, is a worthwhile investment. And and like I have the hammock I have is the ENO. It's the Eagle's Nest Outfitters one.
Yep.
And it was actually a birthday gift from my dad several years ago. And he got me the one, like it was this whole set. And it came with like a rain fly, like a rain tarp thing.
Yep.
And the like bug net.
Yeah. So one of the options to fix that sleeping pad thing, and because sleeping pad, you've got to have the right sleeping pad. Yes, the hammock ones are a little bit more of a challenge to be obviously in there, and the hammock that you talked about and the one that I have, they're designed to lay diagonal so you can kind of lay flat. One of the other ways to do that obviously is to do an under quilt, so you can kind of wrap the quilt underneath the hammock to insulate it. I guess it really depends on what kind of temperature you're also obviously you're sleeping in. The hammock that I found, and I actually got two of them a couple of years ago because I really enjoyed them. And one I was going to keep in the camping gear, and then one for the motorcycle. It's by a company called One Wind, and it's a 12-foot hammock. And so obviously length matters in this. Size does matter in the hammock game, because too short of a hammock, you don't have enough material based on your height where you can get diagonal. And it's a really awesome package. I mean, it comes it comes wrapped in this little cylinder with the end of it has a, I can't remember what they call, but it's basically it's a buckle, and it comes with two tree straps. And so you can get the straps out of one end of it. So it's got drawstring cinches on both sides. One side, you can get the strap out. So you tie the strap around, and then before you take the hammock out, you loop the strap through the buckle. And then it's designed, I don't know what kind of buckle it is, but it's designed, obviously more weight you put on it, it cinches that buckle, it tightens that buckle even more. And then once you have that out, you then just pull the hammock out, and it's got the bug net, the guideline, all kind of roped in there in one. And then when you get it to the other end, you just attach the last strap and you cinch it in, and you're good to go. Really impressed. And it's lightweight, and it's very comfortable. The bug net has the opening on the bottom, so you just climb in there and you get in, and you got the line, and you can adjust the tension. And what I like about it is they have an underquilt that goes with that, and then they also have that entire setup where you can do the rain fly, and you can seal it into like a little compartment. But yeah, that's on there. But a gorgeous weekend of camping, whether you're in a tent or whether you're in a camper or a hammock, is just always better when you have nicer weather.
Yep.
Doesn't matter what you're in. Well, I guess a camper wouldn't matter if you were dealing with rain. You just sit back and relax and go cook yourself some tuna melts and watch a little TV on your comfy chairs inside the camper. But they always spark good conversations. There's nothing better than sitting around the campfire and engaging in conversations, which is probably where a lot of my thinking and a lot of your thinking and talking points come from. We had one over the weekend, which is kind of how we got to today's show. And it was somehow we got on the subject of everyday carry.
Yep.
And I was talking about it with someone who doesn't carry a firearm. So no better person to discuss everyday carry with is a guy that fully believes in everyday carry. So this is how we got to where we are today. And I know that you and we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
And Paul and I have talked about it. I mean, it's something that whenever you get around like-minded people, it comes up. But I guess, there's people that carry items every single day, and they're not firearm items, but they can be, and they should be, I guess, always carried. And that's why it's called everyday carry.
Yep.
And I don't know, I don't know how it started, but I said, everything goes into my pocket in the same way every single day, and it comes out of my pocket the same way every single day. They go into the same place, and they start from the same place every single day. It's what happens. There's always, and the setup is always the same. And I know you've talked about that, how you set your belt up, your battle belt up, how you set your vest up. So everything is kind of uniform. And, they were talking about, well, it just goes in a bag. It goes in a purse. It goes in here. Yeah. I'm just like, oh my God, how do you do with that? How do you, I always know if I need to get a pen, I go to my right pocket, and a pad's in my left rear pocket. So,
yep. Yeah. It's, EDC, I'm one of those people that, actually, that's a good question for people that, that aren't like us. Because I think when a lot of people are like, when guys like you and I talk EDC, like the first thing that pops into your mind is your gun.
Right.
But honestly, for a lot of years, even in adulthood, I didn't carry a gun every day, but I did still carry. I mean, I tell people all the time, I've been carrying a pocket knife since I was 6 years old. Like literally,
right.
If you charted out my life day by day, since I was 6 years old, there would be a much greater percentage of those little blocks that are colored in where
right.
at a minimum, I was carrying a pocket knife. And like, I'm even so religious about that. Because, speaking of carrying, whenever I fly anywhere, I try as hard as I can to not check a bag. I do everything via carry-on. And unless if I'm traveling for a competition or something, my gun case will be the only thing that I check.
Right.
But like with that in mind, well, I can't even have a pocket knife because I can't carry that onto a plane. So places that I travel to often, like I have a really nice Emerson knife that just stays at my sister's house. So when I fly home, I can't have a knife on the plane, but as soon as I get there, I have a knife that I just leave it there, and I carry it the whole time I go there.
Yeah.
But it's so there's guns aside, I mean, guns are certainly a part of it, but guns aside, just EDC in general is something that I think more. If you don't want to carry a gun, that's fine, but more regular people, I think, should have some form of an EDC. And I've always wondered, like, so again, like just using the pocket knife example, I've carried a knife for the vast majority of my life, every single day almost.
Yeah.
Unless there's some specific circumstance where I couldn't. But a knife isn't like a masculine thing. I'm not going out and getting into a rumble with the Jets and the Sharks. So like,
right.
Why don't more women carry a pocket knife? That's something I've always wondered, because I mean,
right. And so, and just to kind of bridge a little gap here with that, obviously men for the most part dress differently from women, right? In the whether we're wearing shorts in the summer or pants in the winter, we do have pockets. Women wear dresses, women wear leggings. Obviously they don't always have the ability to carry as many things. So just to kind of go back to what you were saying, I always carry a knife. I feel the same way about checking, but I always do because I always check my firearm. But regardless, I always carry a flashlight. Whether you're carrying on or not, like exactly, flashlight is always in there. Whether a knife can be, whether I can carry a flashlight on a plane, and people often now they think that their phone is everything, and that's great. Okay, yes, your phone does have a flashlight, but how many times have we talked about 2 is 1, 1 is none? Like, just because you repetitive but where I'm going with the phone, and then jump in, like if you're on the phone with somebody, maybe you need to illuminate something. And now what are you going to do?
That's a great, I've never thought of that before. That has never entered my brain before until right now.
Which part?
Well, so
being on the phone and having to use a flashlight at the same time.
A couple of months ago, I went to a concert.
Yeah.
And Emerson makes this little knife that's made out of carbon fiber, so it doesn't show up on a metal detector. So I always carry this if I'm going like to a concert or something like that. I don't want to not have anything, so I carry this little Emerson knife. It's like a karambit knife that Emerson makes that's made out of carbon fiber, and it won't set off a metal detector, and even if they wand you or whatever. So I was going into this concert, and I'm emptying my pockets out, and like, I'll pull it out real quick on my, I don't have it, fail. I don't have my keys in my pocket right now. Like on my key fob for my car, I just have this, it's like a little titanium pry bar. And it doubles as a screwdriver. It actually, like on the pocket clip part, it has like a little hex wrench on the pocket clip part, and it's a bottle opener, and it's actually, it has the little opening to be a wrench to turn an oxygen bottle on and off, like for the type of oxygen bottle they would carry in an ambulance or whatever. So it's this little one-piece multi-tool that's smaller than this pen, but it's attached to my key fob, and so they kind of picked that up, and we're looking at it. And my flashlight, I've never had a problem anywhere ever, not even on airplanes or anything. And I pulled my flashlight out, this one, and put it in the little tray. And they're like, "Oh, you can't have this." And I'm like, "Why can I not have this?" They're like, "It's not allowed." And I'm like, well, you're going to have to do better than that. I said, because I carry my flashlight on airlines all the time. So what you're saying is it's okay for me to take on an airplane, but for some reason I can't have a flashlight in this concert. And then like the supervisor came over. And I actually give this guy credit, because a lot of people that have that position, that are like in a security guard type position, and especially like a security guard supervisor, like their ego is going to win just because I said so. It's going to be like what my mom told me when I was 5. Well, you like, now since you're pushing back, you can't have your flashlight because I said so. But I stayed relatively cool with the guy, and he was like, "Well, it's part of our emergency procedures that if something happens in this concert, all the security personnel have flashlights, and that's what we use to signal each other." I said, "Can I go in the concert with this?" And he said, "Yeah, of course." I said, "Well, every single person that you've led into the concert with this," I'm holding my iPhone for the listeners.
Right.
every single person in this concert that has a smartphone has a flashlight because the phone has a flashlight feature. Um, but anyway, like maybe it's because I carry a flashlight everywhere all the time. And recently one of my friends was like, why do you carry a flashlight all the time? I'm like, dude, I use this flashlight every day for something almost. Like
Every
almost
single
every
day.
day I use it for something.
Yep.
And that's a reason why they include it as a feature of a smartphone now. But I've maybe it's because I always carry like an actual flashlight that it's never crossed my mind that I would need to be on the phone and use the flashlight at the same time.
Yeah.
That's
So now, one of the other things that I carry in my pocket every day are my AirPods. And people are like, well, why are you listening to music all the time? And no, but what happens if you are in an active shooter situation and you need to communicate back and forth to people? Do you want to have your hand on your phone? And no, like I want to be able to be able to communicate and pass information along. And if I have my hand on my firearm or whatever the case may be, but it's a form of communication.
Are you one of
And
those people that like wears your AirPods like around all the time? Because like a lot of people do
no,
that now.
no, not
Well,
at all.
so, I mean, not to shit on your point, but then my argument would be: are you going to stop in the middle of a gunfight and put your AirPods in?
Well,
Because I would
I
not.
mean,
But
no, not in the middle of a gunfight, but if you're in a mall and an active shooter situation takes place, or you're in a supermarket and something takes place and you need to call 911, I mean, sure. Do you have time to? I mean, who knows? Do you have time to? You're going to figure it out. But I'd rather have it and not need it or not use it than have to figure out how to have my hands free to provide medical aid to somebody. I mean, if I have to
yeah,
I'm on the phone with the EMTs or whatever, putting a tourniquet on. I mean, whatever the case may be. I mean,
I'm gonna like again like, and this actually brings up a good point. Like you're like each person's EDC method. Oh, and EDC loadout and the reasoning behind your EDC should be tailored to fit each person. And like with all my years of military training and medical training and all that, just to use your example of an active shooter situation in a mall where maybe you do have a little bit of time and space to cover and as we talked about in the OODA loop, you need to orient yourself towards where the threat is and observe and decide and act. But so I have AirPods too. They stay in my backpack. One of the sayings you came up with a while back that I've really come to love. I've took one from Paul and I took one from you. Like, your thing is what you have on your person gets you to your car. What you have in your car gets you home. And so I do have an EDC backpack, but 99% of the time it stays in my car. Like I'm not actually carrying it around. So the AirPods are something I have in my car, but using your situation for a like the active shooter in the mall situation, I think it would be a safe assumption that I would be the only person with a gun, or at least one of very, very few probably. And again, one of the only people with medical training, or again, one of a few. And anybody that's ever taken a CPR class or a first aid class, the little acronym that is ABCs, check airway, breathing, circulation. In the military, we teach CSCAB, which is C stands for combat, but SCAB is situation, circulation, airway, breathing. And to civilians, they teach airway, breathing, circulation because it's easy to remember because it's ABC. But actually, circulation, meaning heavy bleeding, that will kill you faster than not. You can hold your breath for longer than you can bleed heavily. I'll just put it that way. But we teach SCAB, SCAB, because situation first. So kind of to your point, if I'm in this active shooter situation in the mall, like my priority should be winning the gunfight first, before communication, before rendering medical aid, before any of that. So like, but again, this goes into another argument we've had where you lean back on whatever level of training that you have. But so I may be the only person with a gun or one of very few. I may be the only person with like actual trauma medical training or one of only a few, but every single person around me is going to have a phone. So I would I would concentrate on the situation, being winning the gunfight
Sure.
if necessary, and then rendering aid, and I'll let somebody else handle the comms. So
Right. And again, there's all different types of situations that somebody can find themselves in, but there's often times where you listen to someone where it's 911 call and they say, no, we need you to stay on the phone until help arrives, or this, that, and the other thing. And being able to have both hands free, it'd be better, whether those hands are on a wound, whether those hands are on a flashlight, whether those hands are, grabbing
on a suspect.
on a suspect, on a child. It's just something that I've incorporated into mine, and it makes sense. You know, no, I don't drive around with AirPods in all the time. They're also they're great for when
that
I
was
go
a
to
serious question, because a lot of
no.
people do now. I see people every single day just walking around with them in their ears. That would drive me nuts. I don't know how people do it.
It does drive me nuts. And what's funny is, I don't know why I'm going off on this, but I just started recently rewatching Entourage. And it came out in, I think, early 2000s. And you look at the Bluetooth things that people had back then compared to where we're at now. It's just funny to me. But for me, it's part of the daily, like if I go to the grocery store, I just throw those in, listen to some music, and do my grocery shopping. There are some downsides to some of these things, like the new AirPods. They're amazing noise canceling. When you're on an airplane and you don't want to hear the screaming kid behind you, they're great. But when you're walking down the street, you don't necessarily want that noise canceling. You want to be able to hear your
100%.
surroundings. Now, whether Apple thought about this or they got smart, but they do. They have a switch. You go from noise canceling to transparency mode to you don't have the transparency mode on and you're listening to music and you start talking, it lowers the volume of everything so you can have a conversation with somebody without taking them out. Again, that's just one part. But everything else is the same. The whole flashlight thing, with being able, if you're on the phone and you need to use your flashlight, you can't do that. We always talk about have a piece of gear that does more than one thing, right? Like we've talked about in the past.
So like a couple of things I wrote down for this EDC discussion. It like my number one, I think, mistake or complaint, or the thing that I find the most, and sometimes it's ridiculous, is like carrying way too much stuff. Like I see people all the time that are just carrying way too much stuff, and it's because they have decided to, like, their identity is they're going to be the EDC guy. And so, like, just a couple of things to keep in mind, like when we talked about the personal security piece in the last podcast, where we talked about being aware of your surroundings and stuff. We talked about how somebody that's a predator is, they do their 7-second prod, right? They get there within 7 seconds. They form their perception of you. The R is they do a risk assessment. O is like the observable value that you have, like you have a nice phone or you're wearing nice jewelry, and then D is what danger they think you might pose to them. So predator looks at you and forms that opinion in 7 seconds, is what they say. So like the thing with EDC and like not carrying too much, like a little acronym I've heard before is FEFE, FEFE.
Okay.
And so when you're trying to decide what you want to carry for your EDC, you need to consider frequency, environment, function, and events. So like one thing, like it's a good saying that I've heard before is like, and this was back in the day, I used to do what they call, I don't know if they still call it this, but back when I was doing it, it was called fast and light camping, and it was like specifically for backpackers, like people that are trying to do the Pacific Crest Trail or the Appalachian Trail or whatever, carrying like the light, like how to make your gear as light as possible. And I mean, people even get into, instead of carrying an entire map, like just cut out the little piece of the map that you need, and then once you pass that section, burn it. And so that really get into the weeds. But
Right.
But one of the sayings was, if you're packing for everything, then you're packing for without focus. If you're packing for everything, then really you're packing for nothing. Like,
Right.
because you're completely packing without focus. So I think a lot of EDC people, like people who like at least a portion of their identity is kind of tied to the fact that they have an EDC or what they're EDCing. But you have to narrow your focus. You can't pack for everything.
Right.
It's not realistic. You end up carrying way too much stuff. So FIFI, frequency, environment, function, event. So frequency, like one of the things. Well, I've even heard it said, like, if you're carrying all this stuff, if an entire week went by where you didn't use it, then get rid of it. Now, then that begs the question, like, am I using my gun every week? No.
Well, no, right.
I think I've told the story where I've never actually had to use my gun,
right,
in this country, but I have had to draw it twice. Yep. There's been 2 times where I did have to draw down. Still didn't use it. But like, to me, if you're gonna carry a gun, that's a decision that's kind of all on its own.
Yeah.
Even though that is part of my everyday carry, I do think carrying a gun is kind of within its own category, and kind of, so I exclude it from this FIFI, because I put carrying a gun in the same category as wearing my seatbelt. I don't carry a gun because I'm going to need it. I carry the gun because I might need it. It's the same thing. I wear my seatbelt because I might need it, you know? But yeah. But with the frequency piece, like the guidance that I heard with that was, if it's not something you use this week, get rid of it. And so what came to mind with that, gun aside.
Okay. Well, let me ask you, do you agree with that in totality? Because I don't know, and what I mean by that is, because I don't know, right? We just talked about the gun, and I'm not awesome when it comes to carrying a tourniquet, right? But we've already said that you can hold your breath longer than you can heavily bleed.
Yep.
And if you don't use it, do you not keep that in? Now, I guess, and then I'm just going to sprinkle this on, and then you just take back over. That could be something that you keep in the vehicle or close to you, right? Like, that's where I keep that medical stuff. But go ahead.
So that's exactly where I was going. Gun aside, I think the perfect kind of sanity check for this is like a trauma kit or a tourniquet. And we'll come back to it. But because I think some EDC guys, quick sidebar, when I close my eyes and I think of like EDC guy, I don't think of MacGyver, and maybe anybody younger than us doesn't even know who MacGyver is. Oh, we talked about this before. They're rebooting MacGyver, right?
Well, they did reboot MacGyver.
Oh, all right.
It's
anyway, but like MacGyver looked like a normal, regular dude in jeans and a jacket, and but his training and his know-how was his weapon, so to speak, and he carried around a Swiss Army knife, which we'll talk about in a second, also. He didn't carry, like, the MacGyver's thing was like he never used a gun, but
except for
when I think of EDC guy, huh?
Except for one episode, he used the revolver. Really? He used the revolver, but he took the cylinder out and he used the revolver as a wrench. I'll never forget it. It was the one episode. I'm going to find it. I'm going to find that episode. We're going to list that in the comments below, where we want you to comment on this episode.
Now I'm going to start carrying a revolver. God,
yeah, damn. That's it. Go ahead. No, sorry, finish that up.
No, so when I think of like EDC guy, like what EDC guy should look like is MacGyver, who just looks like an unassuming guy with a mullet.
Right.
Which highly recommended.
Totally.
But I think of this guy that a few years ago, I went to the movie theater, like kind of in the middle of the day by myself. I got off work early and there was a movie I wanted to go see. So I went to the movies by myself. And this guy comes in and like, he looked as though he crashed his car through a 511 store and like came out the backside with like everything 511 like stuck to him. Like he had on 511 hat, 511 boots, 511 pants, 511 jacket, this 511 messenger bag, and like patches all over everything. And like, so I also think, like I said, this was a sidebar. I'm going to get back to the FIFI thing, but if you're a guy like that, like to me, in my mind, the whole point of an EDC, like one of the main central ideals at the center of EDC should be to be discreet.
Right.
But this guy is like trying so hard to be tactical discreet, like he just sticks out like a sore thumb. And it's like, I wonder if he even knows that he sticks out like a sore thumb. But
and I realize that we're 30-ish minutes into this and we keep using EDC, and I know we have most people that are probably people that listen to this show, but for anybody that doesn't and is not this kind of lifestyle, EDC is an acronym and it stands for everyday carry. So I just want to, I know that may be like, oh, okay, we get it. But listen, we're in a couple of different countries on this show, and we have some people that may not obviously live the same lifestyle that the rest of us do. So we just want to put that out there. EDC is everyday carry, and it doesn't mean carry as in firearm. It's the stuff that you carry every day, whether it's your lip balm or your Aquanet hairspray in your purse.
Yeah, but and like I said, EDC can include a firearm, but if it does, that's its own thing. But so going back to this EDC superhero that I saw in the movie theater that day, like, and where it applies to the FIFI, because we're on the first F, which is frequency. There's no possible way. I would venture to say there's no way that guy has ever used 80% of the shit he was carrying. Like he's going back to that original statement. If you tell yourself you're packing for every situation, then you're really packing without focus. And like if you're trying to pack for everything, then you're packing for nothing. It's like if I buy you a Father's Day card and underline every single word, then I've defeated the whole purpose of underlining, right? So the ideal of, if it's not something you've used this week, get rid of it. And you asked, do I agree with it? Like in the broad strokes of the big picture, I do. And I think the trauma kit's a perfect sanity check for that. Like I was saying before, because I have in my EDC bag, and then also separately in my EDC bag stays in my car most of the time. But then also in the back of my car, I have a separate trauma kit and tourniquets, and I have all that stuff in my car. So I would not carry a trauma kit every single day, or even a tourniquet every single day. I don't. It would be dishonest for me to sit here and say that I do. I will tell you, I wouldn't beat up anybody that does. I don't think it's a bad idea. It's just not something I do, because again, the only time, like I've been trained in tourniquets for as long as I can remember, and I've carried tourniquets, if not on my person, like with me in some form or another for a long, long time. And the only time I've ever had to use a tourniquet was in Afghanistan in 2009, which is not to say I never will, but that is enough justification for me to say I don't need to carry one with me every single day. So in the broad strokes, I would agree with when you're considering your EDC, again, gun aside, if it's not something that you use at least once a week, then I say then you probably could purge it from your EDC.
Yeah. And now, again, I mean, it depends on where you are, how you dress. If cargo pockets or cargo pants, cargo shorts are your way of life or what you choose to wear, and you have the room to carry a tourniquet in that side pocket, by all means, carry that. Whatever you feel comfortable. A female, if you carry a purse, you can have a tourniquet in your purse, right? That is something that you should have in there. And especially if you have kids, like have a boo-boo kit in your, you don't got to go crazy and don't have a full TACMED kit in there, but have something. So I think that's very important to take away from kind of the FIFI acronym. There is, if you can and you want to, do it, right? But if it's taking up room and making you look like you're Batman with your utility belt, then
well, yeah, and that's just it. When you're that guy I talked about before, when you're carrying around that much crap, that's makes it. I would, like, this particular guy that I actually saw, and his image is forever locked in my brain, even though I have no idea who he was. There's no idea, like, that guy was carrying so much stuff. Like, I think he has crossed the line into, like, he doesn't even know what he has. Like, because
Probably.
there's probably so much crap in that bag. There's probably stuff at the bottom of that bag that he probably even forgot he had and then bought another one and put it in the top of the bag or whatever. But that gives you, it's more stuff to keep up with, more stuff to inventory, more stuff to do maintenance on. Like we've talked about, if you are going to carry a trauma kit, we've talked about it in the podcast past. Every couple of years, you need to get rid of the old stuff that expires in your trauma kit and put new stuff in there. But like a guy that's carrying that much crap, he's not doing maintenance. He's not properly rotating out his stuff. He probably forgot half the stuff he has. And you're also, like the great Chris Bardagon has said, don't be somebody else's resupply. Like you're also like, that's all to me. I look at that guy and that's a ton of shit for somebody to steal also. But anyway, going, so in the FIFI acronym frequency, we talked about environment, and this one's pretty simple. If you're not in an environment where you need this thing, then don't carry it. And the example I wrote down for that's a raincoat. Like if it's not going to rain, then you don't need to carry around a raincoat. And so if you just apply that mentality to what you are carrying, you could probably rule some stuff out. Like it, are you? I'm, and people online have called me out for this before. Because I made a video and a social media post one time showing my go bag. And so I'm pulling my gun out and putting it on, and because my go bag is looks like a pretty small what's the inconspicuous gym bag, and it has a rifle and a minimalist plate carrier and pistol and all that. And so I was doing a video, but in the video I was wearing flip-flops, which kind of goes back to a point that you kind of glossed over a second ago. Like your clothing is also part of your EDC, but where FIFI is concerned, in my environment here in Southern California, flip-flops are completely socially acceptable and adequate for this environment a great percentage of the time. Now, this is going back to my youth a little bit. I think I was like 26 or 27 years old, and we were having a going away party for one of my buddies in the Navy, and we went out to this bar in Milwaukee, and
Milwaukee.
They're like, we're all Navy dudes. A couple of people in the group were Navy SEALs, a couple were Navy divers, a couple of us were rescue swimmers. Like we all worked together, and we were having a going away party, and there was these two guys at the bar that were like stolen valoring, that were like pretending to be Navy SEALs and weren't. And meanwhile, there's like two actual Navy SEAls like sitting right here beside me. So that didn't go over too well. And we ended up in a big fight with those guys that were pretending to be Navy SEAls. And then we ended up somebody called the cops. And so we ended up having to run from the cops. And it was that night that I'm 45 now, that was when I was like 26 or 27. It was that night that I decided anytime I'm going to like go out like that, I need to wear adequate footwear for running away from the cops or whatever else.
Just for running in period, like running in general. Flip-flops are not it. I mean, I get it. So, everyone wants to.
Yeah, but now I do carry, even when I am wearing flip-flops on a daily basis, I do have a pair of like running shoes and socks that I just keep in my car. So, I'm
going to challenge you there now. I mean, you said the same thing about me with the AirPods. You're going to have enough time. I mean, you have enough time to get there and put your socks and shoes on?
First of all, do not underestimate what I'm capable of in flip-flops.
Okay. And just to kind of talk about that, yeah, sure. I used to wear flip-flops and then I stopped because
good enough for the Viet Cong. It's good enough for me.
Okay? Well, right. I mean, listen, it's not like I'm running, I'm old and tired and it's just not going to do it. But I found alternatives, right? Like, I mean, this is not a plug, but if you go to heydude.com, Hey Dudes have some awesome lightweight shoes.
Yep,
and
I love them.
They are great. I mean, for summertime, you cannot beat those shoes. And they're affordable, and quite frankly, you're not showing off your razorback toes. I mean, you got scraggly toes, and I'm not saying you probably have great toes. You could probably be a foot model, but I'm saying some of us, don't have great looking feet, and we just don't need to be showing them off. And it's funny because Kyle makes fun of the shoes that I wear all the time. But anyway, so go ahead, continue on there with what you were on.
Environment's a pretty simple one. Like,
Right.
and like I said, the best example I could think of is if you're in an environment where you're not going to need a raincoat, then don't carry a raincoat, but apply that to everything that you are carrying. And function is something you already addressed. Function is like, looking at your EDC and try to narrow down to things that have more than one use. I have always been so. Again, you can get sucked down this hole of carrying way too much stuff, and you can say, "Oh, I need a folding knife, and I need a fixed blade knife, and I need a multi-tool, and I need and you're in an effort to have things that have multiple uses, you end up doubling things or whatever. Like I have found in my life, and going, which goes back to that frequency piece and everything, like that one piece little pry bar / screwdriver / wrench that I carry on my keys, that plus a high quality folding knife. I do think an argument could be made to carry a smallish fixed blade knife. But in my life and in my experience, I carry an Emerson knife. I'm a big Emerson nut.
Yeah.
And a high quality folding knife, I think is great, and will get me by without much difference in a fixed blade knife. But just like MacGyver, like I said, I've carried a knife almost every day of my entire life. If you looked at the entire span of my life, I've never been in a single knife fight, but I've used my knife 10 million times for different things.
Exactly.
And I was going to throw out, because we talked about MacGyver and his Swiss Army knife. There was an article that just came out just in the last month that Victorinox, the company that makes the Swiss Army knives, they're going to start making their knives without a knife blade. What do you think about that?
Wow, that's ridiculous. Are you serious?
Yeah, and when I heard it, my mind immediately jumped to wokeness and political correctness and anti-violence or whatever, but they said they're doing it specifically so that people could take a Swiss Army knife on an airplane, because increasingly more countries around the world are imposing restrictions on knives and knife blades, especially like in public transit, and just like in some certain countries, period, you can't carry a knife blade on you at all, period. And so when I first read the headline, I jumped to a conclusion, but when I actually read their statement about it, I was like, that's not a bad idea.
I hope they make it an option.
Yeah. That's my assumption.
Right. And let me just go back to this. This is an inner dialogue and inner dilemma every day with me on whether to carry a knife, a folding knife, or a multi-tool, because all of the multi-tools now have them, right? Yep. And there are times when you just need a screwdriver, or you need the needle nose plier. And I don't want to carry two. I just don't think it's necessary to carry two, right? I'm not going to put a Leatherman or whatever your choice for multi-tool is in a sheath and strap it onto my belt. I want to, I want to keep it kind of minimalistic. So I do run into that dilemma daily. Now, I always, like, I have a multi-tool in the truck. I have one there, and I have one on my desk in my office in case I need it, but I would not hate it. And I know that I would not hate it if I carried one over a fixed blade knife. You did bring up fixed blade versus folder knife. And I carry a folder every single day. There was a minute where I was carrying both, and I'm like, no, we don't need to do that. But like you said, I use my knife multiple times a day, just on Sunday. It's funny, on Sunday we had an event here in Connecticut called Pitmasters and Blasters, and it was put on by Alpha Dog Arms, and amazing food. I can't wait for the second one. And we were sitting there eating, Amy and I were sitting there eating, and I grabbed forks, and we had steak, And she was like, well, do you have a knife? I'm like, well, I always carry a knife. And the pocket knife came out and cut steak just as well as it cuts a cardboard box, folks. So, multi-tool, multi-purpose is obviously the name of the game.
So,
go
sorry.
ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say. So my thoughts on that. So as of next month,
Yep.
because we are in June now, so as of next month, I will have been on active duty in the United States military for 28 years. As of next month, and the one thing I think I made a post about this on social media recently. Like the one thing I have been issued over and over and over and over and over again throughout my career is multi-tools. Like in a couple of years when I retire from the military, I'm gonna be just filthy with multi-tool. And so because of that, and I've kept up with almost all of them. And so I have one in my backpack, and I have one in my go bag, and I have one on this plate carrier, and I have one on that plate carrier, and I have one in my bedroom, and I have one that's in my car in my little sun visor thing. And so I'm lousy with multi-tools. I have them everywhere. So I personally have the luxury of having them everywhere without having to carry one on me. But for many years, I did carry one in my pocket. Like you said, I'm not going to be like Boy Scout dad where I have one in like a leather pouch on my pocket next to my pager. But what I found, I always use this example, is like if you go to REI, they have like the little convertible pants. It's the pants that like zip off in the middle and become shorts.
Yes.
And I've always described those as you have a pair of pants that's not a very good pair of pants that turns into a pair of shorts that's not a very good pair of shorts. And so I do think there's a place for multi-tools. I do think multi-tools can come in very handy. That's why the military has issued me so many of them, and that's why I have them I have one in my camp box, and I have one in this. But for daily carry, I have found that I would rather have a knife that's a good knife instead of a knife that's just jammed into this multi-tool that's one of 19 things that are on this multi-tool. Because I've found, because most multi-tools that have a knife blade, the blade doesn't lock out. I do have a scar on my finger from having a knife blade fold up on my hand and cut across my fingers like pretty bad. I learned that lesson the hard way. So now I don't want a knife blade that's either not fixed or again, that's why I specified a high quality folding knife that has a proven locking mechanism. But I found like carrying a multi-tool, the number one thing on that multi-tool that I'm going to use is the knife blade. And with that being the case, I would rather just carry a higher quality standalone knife that is a knife. And just have the multi-tool like you said, like in my car, in my backpack or whatever.
Yeah. Now Leatherman makes obviously a wide variety, and you've got a good collection of them, and I know that I've got a couple of them. They do make something. Obviously, like you said, Victorinox. Remember when they used to have the MacGyver knife that he carried was pretty small. Then they made smaller ones, and then they made big ones. But as the big ones, they were thick, But and folks, obviously, we always put this show up on YouTube, and it's on Spotify. So for this next piece, there's going to be a visual. So this is the Leatherman that I was contemplating. So obviously, it's a very, it's just like your Victorinox, your little Swiss Army knife.
That's a Leatherman Swiss Army knife. Yeah, for sure.
And it does have a lockout for the blade. So, it was one of those ones that I was thinking about, but we didn't go that route, but there were options. And, like I said, it's an inner dilemma that I deal with. I still just carry a folding knife, but I do use it very, very often. So
when I was a kid, this has nothing to do with anything, I'm just going to throw it out there. When I was a kid, when I say a kid, when I was like 12, 13, 14, I started collecting all the different Swiss Army knives, and and so people would give them to me for gifts, and some of them were so ridiculous. Some of them not lengthwise, but thickness. Some of them were 4 or 5 inches thick. and it had a fork that folded out of it and a spoon that folded out. And I had one of them that actually had a clock in it, and it had like all this stuff.
God.
And after I joined the Navy, I think my mom just sold them all. But for many years, I collected all those ridiculous Victorinox Swiss Army knives that had like everything on them. But the one last point I wanted to make before I move on is you've already brought it up a little bit, but your phone is a great multi-tool. If you have it set up for that, you can have, it's a compass, it's a GPS, obviously it's a communication device, it's a flashlight. I'm a nerd, but I actually have an app on my phone. It only works if somebody else has the app too. But you can send Morse code with your phone, so you can program in a message on the app and it'll flash it using the little flashlight and Morse code. And then like if you have the app, you can turn on the app will access your camera, and you hold your camera up and it will decipher the Morse code message for you. So it can be a passive communication device. Obviously, it can be an active communication device using it as a phone. But your phone is actually a fantastic multi-tool. I just wanted to point that out, that there are many, many legitimate, like quote unquote EDC applications that you can put on your phone.
Right. And I want to kind of touch on the phone thing as well. I'm not telling you that your phone can't be used as a pad and a writing utensil. You can take notes on it. But again, you go to that same thing of, if you're on the phone and you need to take a note, can you do it? And with the phone today, yes, you can. You can throw it on speaker and you can start typing a note to it, or you can dictate into it. It all works. And so the phone is a great resource. And I think a lot of people kind of just think that, well, I've got that on me, so I don't need to carry a pad and a pen and a light, or a wallet. I mean, Apple Pay, Android, Google Pay, whatever, it's all on there, but there are flaws to it. So just be aware of that.
I just found like this. It's so awesome that you can use your phone for it. Like blew my mind. You can actually, I guess you can use, I guess maybe you can download an app for this, but it's a web-based thing you can do. You can look at like naked women on there.
Whoa. Yeah, that's everyday carry.
Changed my life. Yeah, I'm not like, well, so it rendered my EDC useless because now I don't even need to leave the house. So, but
moving on.
Yeah, moving. So yeah, your phone's a great multi-tool. There's actually seriously some really good like kind of, I don't know, survival or EDC apps you can put on your phone. Like the Morse code one I think is really neat, but obviously it only works if somebody else also has that app. But
right.
And the last thing in FIFI, so we've got frequency, environment, function, and then the last one to tie back into the tourniquet discussion is events. So if you're going to that you're going into a specific event or a specific situation, and you can ask yourself, what are some restrictions on what I can bring in? Like the example I used going into a concert. Can I have a gun? No, I can't, but I can carry my little carbon fiber knife that won't pop on the metal detector. But that might be a situation where I might want to carry a tourniquet. I'll tell you another thing. As I've gotten a little bit older, I do wear shorts a lot. I probably, I was about to say I wear shorts more than I wear pants. That's probably true. But like carrying stuff on your leg, I've actually become a bigger fan of that. And especially now that there are more streamlined trauma kits and med kits, like we've talked about. North American Rescue makes one that's like it's the POC, the Patrol Officers Kit.
Okay.
And ITS Tactical makes the one that I really love. It's a really minimalist trauma kit. But if you just wanted to carry a tourniquet, you could strap one of those on your leg under your pants. The cat tourniquet is all plastic, so it's also not going to pop on a metal detector. But like the big mass shooting in Las Vegas at that concert, I mean, I think that was a great example of a lot of people that died probably would have survived if more people had just simply carried tourniquets on them, because this is something I always like to throw out every time this topic comes up. Your belt is not a tourniquet. Like, no matter how many times you've seen it on TV in the movies, it's almost impossible to take your belt off and actually use it as an effective tourniquet. That's like, do not tell yourself that that's what you're going to do, and that's checking the block in your for your tourniquet. Your belt was not going to make an adequate tourniquet, unless you're wearing a rat tourniquet for a belt or something. But but anyway, but for events, so so that's the other part of that's the last part of this FIFI acronym for considerations for your EDC. If you're going into a specific event or a specific situation where maybe for this one thing you want to carry something, and maybe you're going into this venue that doesn't allow something, and you can adjust your EDC accordingly. But the other thing is kind of going back to EDC man that I talked about earlier. What is the most, when you're going into any situation, what is the most likely thing that's going to happen? Like, so kind of when we talked about our go bags or bug out bags, like
right.
You need to be realistic. And again, going back to that original statement, I said, you can't tell yourself that you're packing for everything. And I guess did you have anything about that one, about the event?
No, not really. I mean, I think you summed it up pretty well. Short of carrying, you summed it up pretty well. Short of carrying a backpack with everything in it, you're not going to be prepared for everything all the time. So,
yeah. So, recently I went on just like a little day trip out to Catalina Island. For those that don't know, it's an island that's a couple hours off the Southern California coast. It's like a vacation resort spot. But like there's like no cars on the island.
Okay.
It's like everything is like golf carts and you walk everywhere.
Yep.
But like in that situation, I did carry a backpack.
Okay.
And
yeah.
just because I like to throw it out there for things that work for me. There's a company called Recycled Firefighter. And he makes he calls it the 12-hour battalion pack. It's the best little, again, where I'm going with this, discrete day pack that I've found. It's a perfect size to actually truly be a day pack.
Okay.
He makes them for all the people that want to be super tactical. He makes them in camouflage patterns and stuff. But I just have a black one because again, as I've gotten older, when I was younger, I thought it was cool to like advertise to the world that I was a big, tough military guy that had done all this stuff. But as I've gotten older, I've found it more valuable. I've seen the value in being discreet and trying to kind of go unnoticed.
Right.
So carrying this little backpack, this little day pack, I did have my gun on me. I did have my knife on me. I had all my normal EDC stuff in the backpack. I was able to carry, a water bottle, had a med kit, had my little, speaking of carrying your phone as a multi-tool, the little portable charger.
Yep.
And going back to my frequency, environment, function, event, environment, I do have like this little minimalist raincoat that I love. That's made by Outdoor Research. It's a badass raincoat that's like you compress it down, it's like the size of my fist.
Oh yeah.
So I had my raincoat in there, like all that stuff, and as far as I know, I was dressed like a totally normal, everyday civilian human being. I didn't look like Tactical Tim walking around with all this stuff. So there is a place for carrying an EDC backpack. There is, again, it's
of course.
If I run my FIFI acronym, there are events where it does make sense to carry an EDC backpack. And then the last thoughts I had, so carry an EDC backpack, but also looking discreet is the 2 points I wanted to make with that. And then the last thoughts I wanted to throw out there, we already talked about maintenance. If you are carrying a gun or a knife or whatever for EDC, you need to do maintenance on it. You need to clean it. If you're carrying a gun, you need to rotate through your ammo, meaning don't chamber the same round every single day. Like when you come home, you drop your magazine, you take the round out of the chamber. Don't put the same round back in the chamber every day, because I'm not going to go too deep into it, but the manufacturing process for primers, the explosive that's in primers is basically like Play-Doh, and over time it dries out, and continuously going into the chamber can crack it up and break it loose. And then, so if you ever did have to draw your gun and use it, if you've been chambering the same round over and over and over and over for a year, there's a high probability that first round ain't going to go off. Well,
every time when you go to the range, every couple of times, just shoot that ammo.
Yes, 100%.
So anyway, shoot that ammo and reload.
I don't want to beat that dead horse, because that's not what this is about. But I just do want to throw out, if you are, whatever you are carrying for EDC, you need to do maintenance on it. You need, like for your med kits, you need to rotate the stuff out that expires. Gun, you need to rotate out your carry ammo. And the last two things I kind of want to get your thoughts about, other than my phone, My EDC loadout is mostly analog, meaning I'm not relying on a battery and not relying on any sort of electronic device. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, you have a battery in your flashlight.
Yeah.
So
But
I mean, I think
that's a battery that's easily replaced. I can take that battery, throw it away, put a new one in. I'm
sure
not
you're talking
relying
about
on
like
an integrated, like a rechargeable
okay,
thing.
yeah, rechargeable.
But
So
you
so
talked about carrying a pen and paper versus using your phone as a notepad. So I think you and I
right,
are kind of
yeah.
on the same.
So I mean, I think it's a great being as analog as you can is probably a really good idea. Now I'm going to put up on the screen a picture of my EDC. Now, obviously, what you got here is you got my pistol, you got a flashlight, the pocket knife that I carried that day. Everything is there. My wallet, the pad, the flashlight, which is a streamlight, the Fisher Space Pen, and in that and there's a few things that you can change out batteries for, right? Obviously, the red dot, the flashlight on the firearm, the weapon mounted light, and the flashlight on the that I carry in my pocket all have batteries that you can remove. Now, we talk about concealing and being smart with space, right? So that flashlight is a pretty good size flashlight, and I decided to go smaller, and I went with it's another streamlight, and let's see, there we go. It is this little guy right here, the macro stream. Now, what I don't know if I love yet is you pull this down and there is the rechargeable port for it. So I haven't pulled it apart to see if you can actually replace it with a flashlight or if it's just rechargeable. I don't know that I actually love that because I charged it up and it took an extended period of time to get a full charge out of it. Now, if that means it's going to last an extended period of time, and when I come home at night and I put it up on the shelf where it normally goes, I plug it in, great. But I think being analog is important.
I do too.
Because you never know when your phone drops in the water and that phone is dead. Well, now you have no way to use that flashlight or write those notes down. But the phone lets us have that entire situation that we continue to drive home is that, two is one is none, or having gear that has multi-use or double use, if you will.
Yep, I agree. Like, and don't take my word for it. Like Grand Thumb has said over and over and over, the most important piece of tactical gear is a pen. But just as an example of that. But yeah, flashlights, real quick. I have deliberately chosen this flashlight. It's a Nightcore brand flashlight. This light is awesome. I chose it specifically because it only takes one battery. It doesn't take two. It only takes one, and it's a fairly common battery. It's a CR123 battery. This flashlight, it has 3 different levels of brightness, and it has 2 different strobe modes. It has a fast strobe for disrupting an enemy, and then it has a slow blinking like distress signal mode. But yeah, I do think I think it's but most of the time I'm wearing an analog wristwatch. That's an automatic wristwatch, carrying a pen and paper. The flashlight does require a battery, but kind of to your point, I think it's more important to have a battery that I can just change instead of having to rely on carrying around a charger or whatever. Like I guess my phone would be really my only electronic EDC device. Everything else that I carry is analog. And the last point I wanted to bring out is because I just referenced to my watch. I'm also like a watch collector or a watch enthusiast, however you want to say it. And one of the big sayings in watch collecting is buy what you like, because nobody else, no matter what you think, nobody else in the world cares what watch you're wearing. It's very, very rare that I run into somebody out in the world and they go, "Oh wow, you've
Right.
got that watch. I love that. That's so awesome." No, that like it doesn't never happen, but it's very, very, very rare.
Yeah.
So with EDC, don't get sucked into these traps of that because I'll tell you the other thing that attracted me to this light, other than the fact that it is legitimately a really awesome light. And I mean, you can see how big it's roughly the size of my index finger.
Right.
This light costs $37. So it's an awesome light.
Yep.
It's extremely functional, and if I lose it, I'm out $37. So
Yeah.
where I'm going with this, like, don't assume other people care about the stuff you're carrying. So don't get sucked down the trap of that you need to go to Triple Alt Design and spend $800 on the pocket knife that you're going to carry, and buy a Surefire light that costs $400 that you're going to probably lose at a restaurant. And
exactly.
So
right, the Streamlight. So I'm just going to throw it back up. If you look at the Streamlight flashlight in this picture, the bezel is completely worn and just silver. It is not black. That thing has been thrown, dropped, beaten up, in and out of pockets, moved around, rustled in bags, and everyone's, I've heard multiple people say, well, the military uses Surefire. That's what you have to have, Surefire. I wouldn't trust a Streamlight in war. Or I wouldn't trust a Streamlight in war. Well, that thing's been beat to shit, and it still is as bright as the day that I got it. I'm not saying Streamlight is better than Surefire. I'm not saying Surefire is better than Streamlight. I'm saying that I chose Streamlight because a buddy of mine worked for Streamlight, and he was able to show me and tell me all about his stuff and was willing to talk about it where nobody else was. So,
and I'm going to say that every military person that's carrying a Surefire got it for free. So
yeah, so that's why I choose Streamlight. They've always worked, and they are a little bit less expensive than the Surefires. And I've also lost them. I've lost them on an airplane, and I'd rather not have to go buy a crazy light or an expensive light. Back to the watches thing. I do a digital watch more than I do an analog watch, and it is an Apple watch. I do go between an Apple and a Garmin. It also acts as a light. Those Garmin watches, the Phoenix, the Tactics, all of those have a light feature that it's got to be close to a 250 lumen light that comes out of the bezel of it thing. And I use that so many times when I would go camping and whatnot. And that's I have that on me, and I go out and you go take that midnight bathroom break, and there it is. When it comes to everyday carry, think about it as just a routine. And I know women out there, and maybe this is more for women to think about a lot more than men, because it's very simple for us. Again, we either put on pants or we put on shorts. They all have pockets, and our pockets, men's clothing pockets, are real pockets we have deep pockets so we can put stuff in it. Women's clothes, they're not designed the same way. They're smaller pockets. They're shorter. They don't have as much depth, but most women carry a purse, and there are things that I would recommend you can carry in your purse, everyday carry. A firearm is not one of them. A knife could be. It makes more sense to carry the knife on you, but you can put the knife in the purse. The only thing I would recommend not is your firearm. Keep that on you.
100%.
So, but whatever it is you decide to carry every day, do that every day. Sure, I understand there's going to be times when you're, just going out for a walk, but carry some form of your everyday carry on you, because it's crucial to your gear, to your daily situation. So that's kind of what I have on it.
The last thing, we haven't mentioned it, the last specific thing, I'm not a smoker. I don't smoke cigarettes. I carry a lighter in my pocket every single day. So that's also something to think about. But and I use it, like going back to that frequency thing. I don't smoke cigarettes. I carry a lighter in my pocket every single day, and I use it multiple times a week. Going back to the FIFI acronym. Just to piggyback off what Chris said, the one thing for women, don't carry your gun in your purse. Like he said, everything else fine, but if you're going to carry a gun, as we've already said, that's kind of its own category. But don't carry your gun in your purse. Carry your gun on your body. But yeah, I think that's
it, folks. As always, we've got probably a lot to talk about here in the next couple of weeks. There's been a lot of things that have happened in our country. Well, there's been one thing that's happened in our country over the last few days that has created a lot of buzz and a lot of talking about it. And at some point, we'll probably dive into that. We'll probably dive into it. We've got a presidential candidate that has just been convicted of 34 felonies, and it's the first time in history that we've experienced something like this, and it's polarizing the country in a couple of different ways. I think it's going to do a little bit more for the Republicans than it is for the Democrats. I think there's been a lot of just shit that's being put out there, and so we've got a lot to talk about. As always, we will get into it and hope that you guys get into it as well in the comment section, whether it's here on YouTube or on Spotify. You can do either one of those, but like we say every week, we appreciate your time. We appreciate you spending that time with us, and you guys stay safe out there. And until next time, Jamie.
Nope. This was a good discussion on everyday carry, and man, we can open up a whole new can of worms with what you were just talking about. But yeah, no, I got nothing else. I'll just say that just to reinforce one of the points Chris made at the top, I've been carrying more or less the same EDC for so long, and I carry everything in the same way in the same location on my person every day. Sometimes I can just be sitting on the couch and like feel that something is missing out of my pockets. Like that's how dialed in my EDC is. But anyway, that's all I've got. It's easy to be hard. It's hard to be smart.
Awesome. Okay, guys, you stay safe out there. Until next time, ZP002 out.